Hello everybody! We're here today with all these kitchen utensils. Ano ba yung gagawin natin today? Are we going to have our first cooking vlog sa growth? Syempre hindi. We're going to have a talk about your child's growth, and we're going to see how we can use these kitchen utensils for your child's development. Now, a lot of times, we think na, kailangan na magpa-therapy ng anak ko, or I have to work on my child's development. That means I have to buy toys, I have to buy these learning materials, but ini-ignore natin na ang daming bagay na andito na sa bahay na pwede mo palang gamitin. And that is why we're gonna start with the kitchen, and yung mga gamit, lahat ng to that you can find in the kitchen, okay, you can use them to develop your child's fine motor skills. And that is today's OTTTT, Occupational Therapy Tools and Tips Thursday! Naiisip natin agad with fine motor skills, handwriting, or feeding, or activities of daily living kung saan nila ginagawa yung self-care. So, first thing that you can think of na pwede mong kunin sa kitchen, yung spoon natin, yung fork, tsaka yung knife. Pero ang dami pang pwede nating gamitin, okay? Lalo na for parents na mahilig mag-order online, okay? Sa Lazada, sa Shopee, may isang reason pa kayo na pang-convince sa asawa ninyo na mag-order kayo ulit. Okay? Add to cart mo na yan. If you remember, fine motor skills natin, from the word na fine, it means it's gonna make use of tiny muscles in making tiny movements. Very small movements, di ba? Kapag nag-cut ka, or nag-write ka, or nag-feed ka, it makes use of your tiny hand muscles para makagalaw. For younger kids, hindi pa to ganun ka-develop, okay? So, ang gusto natin mangyari, we're gonna make it easier for them muna. Instead of this tiny spoon, we can use this bigger ladle para matarget muna yung pag-scoop niya, okay? So, compared to the spoon, tignan nyo, pwede mo yung gamitin yung dalawang hands. Okay? So, hindi siya malayo from the spoon, but at the same time, it makes the child practice muna yung bigger muscles ng body niya. So, from these movements, you can work on scooping, you can work on transfers, okay? Na-improve na rin yung bigger muscles ng body niya, which allows your child to maintain sitting or standing, or yung pag-balance lang muna nung trunk niya para better din yung movement ng hands niya. Okay, so with this ladle, you can do scooping, transfers. With other items, you can also let your child start pouring. So for example, yung mga cereal boxes, i-pour niya from your pitcher, or yung ibang materials at home, you can let them pour pa rin. Ang important dito is hindi nila, katulad nito, ang important is hindi kailangan clean lahat. You're gonna expect that it's going to be messy, but mess means that your child is getting practice, and later on, mas magiging refined siya, and mas magiging tama din yung movement nila as they gain better muscle or motor control. You can start with bigger materials muna. For example, with transfers, you can start with fruits. From one container, transfer to another. You can already introduce here counting or identifying fruits, or even here, you can also you can use these muffin trays. Ito pala yung muffin trays. Ito ay baking pan. Di ko alam yung name. So, if you know, comment down below. And here we have the egg trays. So, we already added, since madaling mag-crack yung mga real eggs, you can also do the toy eggs. Okay, so aside from transfers, they can already do egg opening, egg closing. Mas fun siya if you hide tiny toys inside. Once you're done with bigger movements, you can already start moving gradually into smaller materials so that you can work on with the smaller muscles, which will help your child practice those tiny muscles that they will use later on for coloring, for writing, for brushing their teeth, combing their hair, and a lot of other things. So once you're done with the bigger materials, you can move on to these smaller containers, like these ramekin bowls. You can do smaller transfers of smaller materials to these bowls. You can also move to these measuring cups, which will allow you to include some number concepts, some counting, some measuring if they're ready for it. And you can go to these smaller scoops, which I use for my coffee. You can let them help you brew your coffee, help them measure ingredients when you're cooking. After transfers, you can also move on to squeezing to improve their grip strength and improve the way they hold materials and gain control in how they use toys, how they use tools, and how they manipulate objects in their environment. So we can start with the tongs that they can grip in using to pick up and letting go of objects. We can also have this garlic thing. So if you know this one, comment down below. This is a garlic, something I use to crush garlic, where I put the garlic and then squeeze it out. But if your child is not ready for that one, you can use other materials. You can have this Play-Doh, which is my favorite. Okay, so aside, if your child is not yet ready for the other food or more difficult food that they need to manipulate, you can start with Play-Doh. Easier to control, it holds its shape, and it provides resistance, which means it's harder for your child to do the movement. That means more practice for your child. Next, we have this one. I use this for cutting some vegetables. It's I think a safer version for cutting vegetables instead of the knife, but it's also good practice for squeezing. Even this one, I don't know why it's in the kitchen, but you can use this for grip strength. You can make it more difficult by letting your child practice with real vegetables or fruits. They can use the grater. This time they're gonna use both hands, so it will be a little tricky if you let your child use two hands already. But this is good practice. They're working together. You can transition then to using the spoon and the fork, the knife and the fork, and using both hands together already. Next, we're gonna move on to even tinier materials. We can start with this toothpick, where you can use Fruit Loops or other cereals. You can let them pick up the toothpicks. You can let them shoot the cereals in the toothpicks, and then have them play at it for hours. You can also let them crumple these foil. Okay, so this aluminum foil, they can get hold of it and then they can turn them into small balls. They can put them in the muffin trays. You can also have them tear it up, okay, as practice instead of paper. And then they can even use the foil to form some shapes and use it in pretend play. You can also move on to cereals, and they can pick up very tiny bits, which means smaller muscles and better practice for their tiny fingers. I have here these strawberry almond crunch, the granola, and we can move on to tiny oats. There you go. So it's also safer for kids, because a lot of kids, when they mouth, they have a chance of choking on these things. But if you have these oats or things that are edible, at least they're much safer for your kids. You can also have these tiny caps, okay, which they can use to turn. Very small, very tiny. This is also a lot harder when you have the rotation already. But you can start with bigger caps and moving on to the smaller caps. Still, starting with the big muscles, moving down to the very tiny muscles. You can be more creative, and I know you have a lot more utensils at home. So if you have more ideas, comment down below. And if you learned something today, you like and subscribe to our channel. Share it to people who have a lot of stuff in their kitchen, or who knows how to name all of these things, because I know I missed some of them. And I hope you have fun in the kitchen and at home. And that's it for another OTTTT Occupational Therapy Tools and Tips Thursday. See you next Thursday.